Bet horse racing on DRF Bets. We'll match your first deposit of $200. Get free expert picks and past performances, plus weekly cash back. All from Daily Racing Form, the most trusted name in horse racing. Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Mike Beer for Breeders' Cup Focus. In this edition, we're going to take a closer look at some of the major contenders for this year's Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Here's the top 10 list, ranked in preliminary morning line odds order by Daily Racing Form's Brad Free. And the Dirt Mile, like the Sprint, are going to have horses cross-centered in both, most notably Jack Christopher and Gunite. Those horses would be contenders in either race, especially Jack Christopher, Mike.
Yeah, Jack, it's going to be very interesting to see which race they opt for, because I do think he's a major player in either the Sprint or the mile.
A mile for him is going to be a two-turn mile at Keeneland, and Jack Christopher's best races come around one turn in New York, whether it's 7 furlongs or such. But Jack Christopher is the kind of horse I think that's adaptable around 2 turns at a mile at Keeneland. He'll have to beat Laurel River, a horse that's really come into hand for trainer Bob Baffert. He won at 1 turn last time out. That's the Pat O'Brien at Del Mar. We'll take a look at that race right now. Laurel River was very impressive in this race, Mike. He just takes things over turning into the stretch. For a second, it looked like the cavalry charge was upon him, and then he was gone.
Yeah, he did run really well in here. He finished very strongly to get away from this field through the final furlong or so. He also just set a beautiful trip just off the pace in here, Dan. He's got that kind of handy speed. It makes him really dangerous going the mile. He obviously stays. He's been really, really strong in his prior 2 starts around a 2-turn mile out in California. There's a lot to like here.
Cody's Wish, who's 4th on our list, brings a 112 Beyer speed figure to the party. He took down a very big scalp last time out at Saratoga. Let's watch this sprint race where he defeats Jackie's Warrior. Now, this is a 1-turn race. You see Cody's Wish come widest and fastest, and he runs down a championship caliber horse in Jackie's Warrior. I think Bill Mott is a little bit concerned that maybe Cody's Wish is a bit of a tweener, that he is more of a 1-turn horse. But that 6 furlongs of the sprint's just a little sharp for him.
Yeah, that's probably something to be concerned about. Regardless, this horse has basically run well in all 10 of his career starts, Dan. He's been good from day one. Earlier on in his career, a really bad gate horse, and he cost himself probably a couple of additional wins by not getting out of the gate that well. It seems like he might be over that a little bit. He was really impressive beating Jackie's Warrior last time.
And this is a horse that's shown some talent, and he's run well around 2 turns in the past. It'll be interesting to see where he's placed in the early part of this race. He came from way out of it last time out. We know if Jack Christopher runs here, he'll be forwardly placed. Let's watch his most recent race. This is sprinting against fellow 3-year-olds, and he's the best 1-turn 3-year-old in the country. And he just did what he had to do in this race, Mike. You see Gunite, who's a nice, hard-trying horse, chasing him in vain. Jack Christopher was better than he was on this day. I think Jack Christopher's a better horse than Gunite, and I don't think stretching out to the mile will change that.
Yeah, I don't either. I'd be surprised actually if Gunite went in the dirt mile. It just doesn't seem like that's going to be a good distance for him. Either way, though, Jack Christopher is just a little bit better than Gunite. He's a brilliant kind of horse, Dan. He has really handy speed. He cruises up on horses when he has to sit off of them. He really finishes too. I don't know which I feel like is the better race to run him, and I don't know if it's the sprint or the mile. They have a real tough decision to make, I think, his connections.
I really am hoping Cyberknife runs here. It appears that Brad Cox will also enter him in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Cyberknife, of course, the winner of the Haskell Invitational. He ran 2nd in the Travers. He hit the board in the Pennsylvania Derby. He is an honest horse that would be really up against it against some exceptional older horses in this year's Classic. But I think a mile is not too short for him. He seems to be maturing, way more mature than he was earlier this year, and he fits with these horses.
I agree with all that stuff. I think this is probably the right race to run him in. I mean, you don't want to, have your top 3-year-olds necessarily. And I do think he's one of the top 3-year-olds, Dan. You don't really want them ducking the older horses come Breeders' Cup Classic time. But this year, this just might be the better race to run him in.
Let's take a look at 6 through 10 on our DRF list here on BC Focus. Highly motivated, occasionally runs a fast one when in the mood, Mike, but he's sort of an in and outer. Maybe if he shows up with his A race, he gets a piece of this.
Yeah, they should run. They should run this horse in the sprint, Dan. I mean, I prefer him around one turn. I don't think he's a natural route horse, although he's run some, fine races going a little bit longer. I think he's a closing sprinter, and I feel like in that sprint, the race that we've already looked at, they could just sit and try to make one run with this horse, and that might work.
Of 7 through 10, Simplification is a solid horse who was good earlier this year. He had a bleeding incident in the Preakness. He's slowly rounding himself back into form. But I think Slow Down Andy's a little bit underrated coming from Southern California, Mike, because he's run some solid races, and I'm not sure we've seen his best yet. Does he have to improve? Certainly. But again, if you don't believe in the Laurel Rivers, and you can look for a price or at least a horse to round out your single race exotics, why not Slow Down Andy?
Yeah, no doubt about it. He's a horse that has a little bit of upside. Even Senior Buscador, Dan, he did not run poorly in the Pat O'Brien last time, trying to come really wide in that race and staying on to the end. I mean, he's a little bit of a horse who needs some, pace to set up his run. But if they go fast in front of him and he gets a clean trip, he could be there at a price.
Right now, Laurel River is the preliminary morning line favorite for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. He's trained by Bob Baffert. He sure looked good last time out. It'll be interesting to see where the 3-year-old Jack Christopher decides to go. Will it be the Dirt Mile or will it be the Sprint?